Hey friends, let's work on some endurance. I'm going to put some more information in the description bar about what endurance actually is. It's very, very important to focus on how to endure, because you may not be so good at testing because you get tired after the first minute of dictation. But the reason you're tired is because you only have practiced 1 minute of dictation at a time, and that's it. Endurance pushes that limit. It challenges your 60-second limit for writing on the machine. So I found a Wikipedia page. I clicked on a random article, and that's what I'm going to read. I'm going to read the entire article, so whenever it's done is when I will stop reading. Just go ahead and write to my words. These words aren't particularly hard. They're just whatever the article says. They're not particularly easy either, but the point of endurance is to hang on whether it is easy or hard or both. So let's get started. I'm not reading at a certain words per minute either. I'm just talking. We're just talking. We're having a conversation, and the conversation is just with me. So I'll do an endurance at a certain speed later on, but this time we're just writing. Not everything has to be clocked. You're not always on a time limit. So let's get started. Harriet Tubman was an African American anti-slavery worker and humanitarian. She was also a Union spy and the first black woman to ever lead an American mission during the American Civil War. She was born into slavery, but she escaped. During her life, she made 19 trips. She helped more than 700 slaves escape. She used the Underground Railroad. When Tubman was a child in Dorchester County, Maryland, she was whipped and beaten by many different masters. When she was very young, an angry overseer threw a heavy metal weight at another slave. The weight accidentally hit Tubman's head. That caused seizures, headaches, powerful visionary, and dream experiences. She had those problems all her life. Tubman believed the visions and vivid dreams came from God. In 1849, Tubman escaped to Philadelphia. Slaves were free there. She later returned to Maryland to rescue her family. She eventually guided dozens of other slaves to freedom. Slave owners offered large rewards for the return of their slaves. Tubman was never caught because nobody knew she was freeing the slaves. When the American Civil War began, Tubman worked for the Union Army. She worked first as a cook and nurse. Later, she was an armed scout and spy. She was the first woman to lead an armed group in the war. After the war, she moved to her family home in Auburn, New York. There, she cared for her aging parents. She became active in the women's suffrage movement in New York until she became ill. Near the end of her life, she lived in a home for elderly African Americans. Years later, she had helped create that home. Harriet was a leader and still is. Early life and education. Tubman's mother, Rit, whose father might have been a white man, was a cook. Her father, Ben, was a woodsman. He did the timber work on a plantation. They married around 1808. According to court records, they had 9 children together. Lena was born in 1808, Mariah in 1811, Soph in 1813, Robert in 1816, Minty, Harriet, in 1821, Ben in 1823, Rachel in 1825, Henry in 1830, and Moses in 1832. Tubman's mother was assigned to the big house and had very little time for her family. Tubman took care of a younger brother and a baby. This was typical in large families. When she was 5 or 6 years old, Brodus hired her out as a nursemaid to a woman named Miss Susan. Tubman was ordered to watch the baby. Tubman was whipped. She later talked about a day when she was whipped 5 times before breakfast. She had the scars for the rest of her life. She found ways to resist, such as running away for 5 days, wearing layers of clothing as protection against beatings, and fighting back. As a child, Tubman also worked at the home of a planter named James Cook. She had to check muskrat traps in nearby marshes. She did that work even after she got measles. She became so ill that Cook sent her back to Brodus. Her mother nursed her back to health. Brodus then hired her out again. Tubman spoke later of her acute childhood homesickness. She compared herself to the boy on the Swanee River. When she was older and stronger, she did field and forest work, driving oxen, plowing, and hauling logs. Head injury. One day, the adolescent Tubman was sent to a dry goods store for supplies. There, she met a slave owned by another family. That slave had left the fields without permission. His overseer was angry. He demanded that Tubman help restrain the young man. Tubman refused. As the slave ran away, the overseer threw a 2-pound weight at him. The weight hit Tubman instead. Tubman said the weight broke my skull. She later explained her belief that her hair, which had never been combed and stood out like a bushel basket, might have saved her life. Bleeding and unconscious, Tubman was returned to her owner's house and laid on the seat of a loom. She had no medical care for 2 days. She was sent back into the fields with blood and sweat rolling down my face until I couldn't see. Her boss returned her back to Brodus, who tried unsuccessfully to sell her. She began having seizures and seemed to fall unconscious. She later said she was aware of her surroundings while appearing to be asleep. These episodes were alarming to her family. They couldn't wake her when she fell asleep suddenly and without warning. This condition remained with Tubman for the rest of her life. Larson suggests she may have suffered from temporal lobe epilepsy because of the injury. Family and marriage. Around 1844, Tubman married a free black man named John Tubman. Little is known about him or their time together. Their marriage was complicated because she was a slave. Since children would have higher the status of their mother, any children born to Harriet and John would become slaves. By this time, half the black population on the eastern shore of Maryland was free. Marriages between free people and enslaved people were not uncommon. Most African American families had both free and enslaved members. Larson suggests that they may have planned to buy Tubman's freedom. Tubman changed her name when she arrived to Philadelphia. When she returned to Manchester to tell her husband to come with him, he was remarried already. I did not know that much about Harriet Tubman. I learned the same information you learned just now. I don't expect you, when you are endurance training, to not drop. I don't expect you to have a perfectly clean transcript. I just expect you to hang on. Just hang on. That's all you've got to do. And then your speed will catch up later. Your accuracy will catch up later. Don't be too hard on yourself. Sometimes reporters have to endure even if they're not getting 100% of the dictation, and if they are dropping, and if some stuff is coming up in steno, but they hung on. That's a skill to have. You can be the fastest and cleanest reporter in the world, but if you can't hang on longer than 60 seconds, nobody would want to hire you. So you did a good job. If you would like, send me your transcript. Don't forget to add words to your dictionary if you don't have your software already. Add some of these words in your dictionary. You never know what you're going to need. You never know. One time I did a deposition of a professional tarantula trainer. You just never know what you're going to do. So have a good time, guys, and I will see you in the next video.